Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Bob Miles, founder and CEO of Salad.com, which is a comprehensive cloud infrastructure platform offering container as a service or CaaS for virtually any use case, whether it's bootstrapping VPN services, spinning up P2P gaming ecosystems, or securely distributing batch jobs to globally geo-distributed nodes. Bob, thank you so much for joining the show. It's so exciting to chat with you. Also, because you come from a bizarre background in piloting, aerospace engineering, and traveling the world. And I always love to talk to founders who have a lot of different experiences and kind of enriches their ability to, I think, adapt and navigate whatever their startup and environment is. So before we get into all that good stuff, though, what were you doing before you started Salad?
Great to be here, Julian. A bizarre background. I'll take that. Prior to Salad, I was actually working in another startup. It was the startup that brought me out to the States, a consumer drone startup company called Teal in Utah. And I joined as the fifth employee, left as sort of the 40th-ish employee, and kind of danced around from product to project management to hardware. So wearing many hats as one does.
Yeah.
Startup.
Yeah. What was the transition from going, piloting and engineering to then, building companies and looking from a product lens and building around it, which product is interesting because, not only are you, having discovery calls with users and going through different iterations of, the viability of something, go to market strategies, kind of, change the direction of a product. But typically people study product and then jump into it. So what was the antithesis of getting into that?
Yeah, there was no formal education for me in product. It was trial by fire. I sort of the genesis for me was, always wanted to be a pilot, quickly learned that was not for me once I got my private license and kind of recognized there's no creativity in flying for good reason, right? But I needed that creative outlet. So not knowing what to do, went to university, studied engineering, and then got a great job, an engineering job at an airline, lasted 9 months and was sort of out in the startup space. So product was where I arrived. I've got that technical background with engineering, so I'm dangerous enough to kind of understand the technical side of it. But really it's the product that touches all of those things that you described before, which excites me. And sort of that's where I landed, with many attempts at different startups, a few successes, but product along the way for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You spent some time building product both in Australia and also in the States. And then now, as we chatted, you're in Puerto Rico. But what's the difference between the consumers of, the different, I guess target audiences that you were, that you were building for? What did you have to consider? What were they interested in? Are they fundamentally different or are they similar, and in dependence to what their needs and problems are that you're solving?
Yeah. Every startup's got a kind of a different ideal customer profile. And, even in real time at Salad, this is something that we deal with. We're building a marketplace. You've got your supply side, you've got your demand side. The user persona for each is profoundly different, and making sure that you spend the time to as best you can, truly understand each of those and kind of what makes them tick, what motivates them, is super important. So yeah, over the years, I've had many different kind of target customers, I suppose, and happy to build on what we're dealing with today, reconciling with that marketplace, but definitely, fundamental to being successful in a startup.
Yeah, I definitely, want to get into, in terms of Salad.com, the different personas, different challenges of a two-sided marketplace. I run a company that worked within a two-sided marketplace, and it's very unique versus having, an ideal customer profile, selling directly to them, and really being kind of laser focused in that. I feel like it's like a juggling, it's like juggling a lot of times when you're dealing with the two-sided marketplace. But, from a product perspective, how do you go about uncovering what your users are needing? A lot of founders have talked about different, consumer reviews or getting on calls and chatting with their customers who are using their products. And and then dwindling down the different feedback that they're getting to actually focus on needs. What is your process strategically to hone in on what you need to build and what you need to focus on?
Yeah. Step one's always, have a hypothesis to test, right? You gotta kind of ground your process in a hypothesis, and then, the process to go out there and actually test it kind of varies from ideal customer profile, from ICP to ICP. When I think about, kind of answering this question in the context of Salad, we spent 4 years. Initially, we took that hypothesis around, we're a compute sharing platform, kind of the sharing economy for compute resources, focusing on the supply side first. We had a hypothesis around who was our ideal customer profile, what's going to make them tick. And step one was, really low fidelity, but kind of higher volume. Let's do a survey. Let's ask a bunch of questions, try and kind of lower the cone of confusion based on that survey. And then the next iteration beyond that really was with a whole lot of customer conversations. And we found the context, the best kind of fishing ground, so to speak, for that was Discord for the supply side of our market. Discord, that chat application for gamers. Lots of conversations, one-on-one, things that aren't scalable, right? Like spending a couple hours with people here or there, introducing the product, whether it's been built or you're about to build it, and just soliciting as much feedback as you can. And more or less on the demand side of the marketplace we're building, it's the same process. Start with that hypothesis, but you're going to source, because of that different demographic, different user profile, source that feedback very differently. We never actually did a survey for our demand side. We just got straight into the one-on-one conversations.
Yeah. Well, describe a little bit more about what was the inspiration behind, Salad.com and what got you into there. You were working with drones for a little bit, and then now you're working with containers and selling computing services. What was that transition like? What inspired this particular product to really invest, time and effort into?
Yeah, I got to be honest and say we didn't have the specific product vision at the point of founding for Salad. It was more recognizing an opportunity and understanding, what the unlock is for that opportunity. And so rewind the clock back to 2017. We saw that the unit economics for crypto mining back then were really compelling for gaming PCs, like $30 to $50 to $70 per month. But most gamers weren't actually extracting that value. And so that was a real curiosity to me. And so I spent a lot of time kind of pursuing that process that we just described before, understanding the friction, understanding the pain points, what's stopping gamers from extracting this value. And we kind of came up with these 3 hypotheses that we then went out and tested, raised some money and built, kind of grew the snowball from there. And so Salad, I would say, was founded on recognizing an opportunity. And that opportunity was that the two-sided market problem for a compute sharing marketplace had been solved. We had crypto mining that represented this headless 24/7, 365 customer that you can switch on, switch off like a faucet, and essentially solve the demand side. And that allowed us to really focus on supply and understand what is going to motivate, incentivize, and retain millions of gamers to share their compute resources when they're not gaming. And it was if you think about our value proposition at the fundamental layer, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's when you are not using your computer, someone else will use it. And so it took us 4 years really to hit our breakout year, which was last year, where we just had spectacular growth, and that was off the back of really just grinding and iterating to truly understand how to build and sustain a meaningful supply side of this marketplace. Now where we are is actually facing a very similar challenge, but on the flip side of the market, which is how do we go on and pick up customers and convince them that the product that we have built, the cloud computing product we built, this managed container service, is equal to or better than the cloud providers, given the infrastructure that we have, which is not purpose-built, dedicated data centers. It's this distributed infrastructure layer that actually powers our container service. So it's a doozy of a challenge, this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something about Discord. Is that kind of one vehicle, I guess, go-to-market strategies that you use to, build trust and build kind of the supply side relationship with a lot of these containers?
Yeah. So the containers are, or the suppliers are the gamers. And one of our core kind of understandings that we talk about internally is that there is no sense in sharing your computer unless you're getting something that's really meaningful for you personally out of it, right? You might have this $50 of latent value untapped within your computer, but if you can't turn that $50 into things that really motivate you, get you excited, there's no sense in running our software. And so one of the big unlocks, one of the things we discovered relatively early was that Discord Nitro, which is their subscription service, was kind of the sweet spot for us in terms of a reward. So if you think about the value proposition, it was when you're not using your computer, run this software and you can actually turn that into a Discord subscription, a Netflix subscription, and that's done sort of seamlessly. So it was really kind of scratching the itch of the value proposition and delivering value to the supply side gamers that Discord played a huge role in. And we work directly with them today.
Yeah. And that's so fascinating that it was more an incentive for a lot of these gamers to get subscriptions pretty much covered through using the software versus, actual monetary value. What's the psychology behind that? What is it, just not having to take that extra step to, have a subscription or maintain it? Is it like, what's the psychology behind caring for the value of not money, but necessarily the ease of access to these different subscription channels?
Yeah. So you could ask the same question of like airline points, right? It's you mentioned psychology. There's a huge amount of psychology. I'm not qualified to talk about that, but I think more so for a lot of our users, it's the demographic on the supply side. If your PC, if you have $10 to $20 of latent value within your PC that you're simply not extracting, if there's an easy way to extract that value and turn it into something that's meaningful for you, that's a real motivator. Whereas, once you get a little further along in your career and sort of $20 a month is, not so meaningful, that value proposition starts to fade a little bit. So we've seen a large amount of our users skew very young, where, those unit economics of $20 a month are really meaningful, because, when you're at that age, earning $20 a month or earning $20 a lot more difficult than when you're in kind of a more mature career. So I think that's a big part of it is just the access to that little bit of extra value that's super meaningful at that young age.
Yeah. Talk about a little bit about the partnership side. You said, you've got the supply side kind of down, you have that engine humming, and now the priority has shifted and looking for more partners, looking for more clients to utilize the supply side. And it's pretty much, it seems like this, I don't know if it's an engine or like a reactor of sorts, creating all this energy around, mining and building. How do you go about navigating these partnerships, and who are you partnering with? Are you partnering with the direct, currencies? Are you partnering with, companies that have a layer on top of those currencies, DeFi protocols? Well, who are your partners, and how do you go about those relationships?
Yeah. So we built inertia into the supply side, we built this minimum viable supply of tens of thousands of machines by tapping into crypto. And these are kind of headless organizations, right? They're protocols. So there's no one you really need to interact with. It's just downloading the libraries and powering these protocols with compute, and you get rewarded in coins or tokens for doing so. So that's really characterized how we've bootstrapped the network today. By bootstrapped, I mean paid for to build and maintain that supply. Now we find ourselves where, as I'm sure everyone's aware these days, crypto kind of in a bit of a lull, particularly after the events of last week. So we've seen those unit economics really drop down, and now we're looking to really diversify revenue away from crypto to different individuals, startups, organizations that have a demand for compute resources. And one of the things that we talk about internally is Salad's good to have problem, which is we've very intentionally built this container service that's completely workload agnostic. So it can serve any workload within any vertical, any industry, any buyer, any decision maker, any user. You can't bring a product to market and be anything to or everything to everyone. So getting, to answer your question, getting very specific about who are our customers. They actually do run the full gamut. We've got NDAs with and POCs with Fortune 50 companies right down to individual developers who are using this thing. But we got 2 ideal customer profiles today. One of them, and a handful of customers in each, and we're growing out that customer list. Generative AI, this explosion in generative AI has huge amount of demand for GPUs, and we just so happen to have a huge amount of GPUs, tens of thousands of them. And then also these use cases where companies, to power their product or service, they're collecting data from the web for doing, price comparisons or brand infringement detection, or anything that requires kind of a distributed network to extract data from the web. They're kind of the 2 use cases where we're finding that we're 10x better than the competitors. And we don't name customers individually, but those are the 2 verticals where we're really kind of growing out the customer base, which is super exciting.
Yeah, it's incredible to see the use of resources and how you've been able to kind of distribute them and make them valuable for not only one type of user, but customers and startups, and kind of utilize, I think, a commodity that's growing, which is computability. I feel like at one point it was very siloed into a few different industry leaders, but there's resources kind of distributed as technology improves. Where is technology going in terms of the improvements it's making? Are gamers having more sophisticated hardware, or is technology just getting more efficient and compressed in terms of how much workload is done? Like, what's exciting about the next level of advancement in this computing technology?
Yeah, we're seeing that across every layer of the stack, right? There's Moore's law at the hardware layer. There's efficiencies and improvements at the software layer, right through from operating systems up to the end and application. But touching on your point around, you use the word commodity yet there. I really see, as our lives become more and more digital, the commodities of this century are going to be these compute resources. So CPU, GPU cycles, bandwidth and storage, and demand is exponential across all 3 of those resources. They eventually we'll see them as commodities: storage, bandwidth, and compute cycles. And so that side of the marketplace completely up and to the right. Demand is exponential in perpetuity as far as we can tell. On the supply side, that is where you have a finite resource, relatively speaking. There's only so many data centers you can build. There's only so many consumer resources connected to the internet, sitting overwhelmingly underutilized 23 hours a day. And that is the opportunity that we're chasing. We know that demand is exponential. These resources will become commodities as demand grows, but supply is really finite. So from the beginning, we've been very intentionally supply focused. Owning that relationship with suppliers, that is where we become the category defining business. Is being known as the easiest, most trusted way to share your compute, because as the pressure builds in terms of demand for compute resources, there's a future inevitability where consumer hardware actually becomes part of, the common cloud. And Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, talks about that.
Yeah. Thinking about, I would categorize, this product as very, innovative. It's very disruptive, utilizing resources in a completely different and new way. How do you go about, communicating that value to both sides of the marketplace, or is it defining that focal point? What is the process behind that? One founder told me that product market fit is a point in time. And, it was such a simple way to say that, things are adapting and you have to adapt with them. What strategies are you using to adapt?
Yeah, it's your product market fit is a point in time. It's a lonely walk through the desert until you find that oasis. It's a lot of iteration work to get there, right? It's trial and error. And so the process to arrive at that, really, I think it kind of circles back to that conversation we were having earlier around defining the ideal customer profile, the user persona, understanding what makes them tick. You've got to understand that fundamentally and then translate that into your feature set. And so for us here at Salad, we know in isolation the two user personas and what motivates them on the supply side and the demand side, what they need. But how do we reconcile those two different needs, wants, desires into cohesive marketing or messaging? And so you think of it as a Venn diagram. There's only a very small overlap between the two. And what we're learning is that security and trust, or more so trust and security. Trust is fundamental to making this model work. If you think about the Uber or the Airbnb model, without those 5-star ratings, that business doesn't exist. It's kind of like a mission critical part of the business. And so that's what connects these two user personas for us. And that's where we spend a lot of time, on the supply side, delivered at a technical level, delivering security that is, watertight. And then on the demand side, communicating where do our responsibilities lies, where do your responsibilities lie in terms of making sure that there's no issues or open doors to be exploited on the security front. And that's a hot topic in the cloud as it is, let alone with the infrastructure that we've got.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the traction. You said last year was a huge success. Yeah, you've seen a lot of growth. What were those growth numbers? And if you are able to disclose any partnerships, what partnerships were you excited to, collaborate and create that you feel will be, exponential in terms of the ability to gain on new partners, maybe within that industry or further?
Last year was our breakout year. We started the year, with top line revenue, in the hundreds of thousands and turned that 10x into the millions. And really that the tailwinds for us were the unit economics that 2021 brought us with the crypto space. We were kind of buoyed by that. And there were a handful of formal and informal partnerships that kind of facilitated that, really in the form of what rewards do we deliver to end users. But I would say the other place where we had great partnerships, really, mutually beneficial, I would say, is in the influencer marketing space. So partnering with these different influencers, educating them on this, radical value proposition that we've got, and they then telegram that message out to their followers, and that really powered the growth engine. When I think about the demand side, which we're working through today, I mentioned that Fortune 50 company. They're kind of working on a P2P gaming platform. I see a lot of potential there, but the one I'm really excited about, and I won't name names, but we're kind of doing the dance right now. That kicking the tires, testing the platform, benchmarking it, understanding just how much better we can be from a price perspective versus the incumbents today. It's this generative AI space. So all of these websites that you go to, with DALL-E 2, with OpenAI and Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, all of these different models where prompted with some text. There is an enormous amount of compute resources required behind that. If there's one thing I think that's true, just circling back to your further point, it's a point in time. That's where you introduce the element of timing, and a huge part of that is luck over skill.
Yeah. I love that. What are the biggest challenges that Salad.com faces today?
It's go to market. It's messaging. It's the analogy I always use is imagine if I was pitching Uber or Airbnb to you 15 years ago. A complete stranger is going to pick you up in their car. A complete stranger is going to stay in his spare bedroom. 99.9% of people would have said, no way, forget about it. Now they're commonplace, right? So we have a real education challenge ahead of us here at Salad. And I think that's wrapped up in our go-to-market. And, we're fortunate as a company. We've got plenty of runway and a rock solid product to figure that out and kind of hone that over time.
Yeah. What's particularly hard about your job?
I mean, solo founder at this point, kind of dealing with the uncertainty that the world is throwing at us. And that for me is eased by the fact that we are really well capitalized right now, thanks to raising a round, a Series A round earlier in the year. But I think the thing I struggled with the most is off the back of that round, the expectations that were set by me based on 2021, kind of extrapolating that out into the future. And then the mismatch between that and reality. And look, no one has a crystal ball, but it's I like to under promise, over deliver sort of thing. And we have not done that this year in terms of some of the metrics. So that's really tough. But beyond that, and kind of something more relatable, I guess the people management's always a big challenge.
Yeah. How do you manage people? I'm sure it sounds like you have a remote working culture. What are ways that you've seen, that are successful ways to continue kind of a cohesive culture, and a culture that's maybe driven towards goals or driven towards maybe a mission? What's your, whether it's philosophy or actual strategy for managing people in a distributed team?
Yeah, there's two or three things. I mean, the first, hire the right people. And then how do you define the right people? We anchor that in brand values. So we got 3 brand values that, these are things from an engineering background. I never really applied much weight, much time, much thought towards, brand values. They feel very hand wavy. But now I find myself in this role, they're incredibly useful in terms of making sure you're making the right decisions around hiring people. And then when bad hires happen, when those happen, kind of anchoring that decision in those brand values. So that's number one. And on a more practical level, we are fully remote. There's kind of like there's a battery that gets discharged over time, just interacting through Zoom. So the way we kind of recharge the batteries, every 6 months, we do a team offsite and we've kind of grown into this. It used to be quarterly, where we'd actually, do a hackathon and kind of get shit done while we're out working together. Now it's morphed into every 6 months, we just spend a week hanging out together, try not to think about work too much and really just focus on relationships and kind of, recharging the batteries.
I love that. I love that. It's amazing that you came from a background where, maybe it was, like you said, it was an undervalued quality to have, strong mission. But I feel like a lot of founders have echoed the similar point where it's really helps in even the smallest day-to-day decision makings. It's like, how do we make decisions? What are we making decisions on? And what's going to actually motivate us to make those decisions? And it's typically around, a couple of values or mission statements or whatever people use to kind of, I think, pin a bullseye to the board and hit a target on that. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for Salad.com?
To be the easiest, most trusted way to share compute. That's kind of the long-term vision for us. That's written by an engineer. I'm sure that'll morph over time, but really it does anchor around trust and ease of use. There's those two are so critical for us to be successful, to introduce a marketplace or a sharing economy model within what is a massive industry that's only 10 or 15 years old.
Yeah. If there was any, learning or piece of advice you'd give to, an early founder or a founder who's in a similar position that you're in, what would that be? What either strategy or practical strategy or philosophical strategy would you give to a founder who's either going through some similar experience or, another experience in a different industry?
It's gonna be a grind. We kind of idolize these startups that go from zero to unicorn in a year, and we all think our idea is capable of accomplishing the same type of rapid traction. But the reality is, for most, it's gonna be a grind. And to get through the grind, it's got to be something you're super passionate about, right? You gotta bloody love what it is that you are building and the market that you're building in. And if you don't, there's a good chance that you are not going to have that tenacity to get up and deal with, the tough times that are kind of inevitable for most startups. So you got to be, and I think, a lot of VCs talk about this. You got to be truly passionate about what it is you're building, because that's the only way you're going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like to ask this question, one for my own selfish research, but also for my audience as well. Whether it's early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Yeah. I've been asked this question before, and I always come up blank. I'm not great at answering this question, to be honest, Julian. It's like the one question. I think more recently, this is back when politics were really starting to get into the workplace in a big way. What Brian Armstrong did at Coinbase, I think was huge for me, really, really impactful, really influential. So yeah, that's kind of my answer there. But I'm atypical in the sense that, I don't have a quick answer on that one. There's no reading list I can get.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have, or that you wish I did?
No, Julian, I mean, the question around what skill does a founder need, I think is the question. And then the point you made before around what that other founder said, which is product market fit, is timing. That's another huge component that I think about, between how much is skill versus how much is luck. It's a spectrum, and there's always both are ingredients. So getting timing, being lucky with timing is just as important. So no, I think those are the two big things that are kind of near and dear to me.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I always like to give my founders and my guests a chance and opportunity to let us know where we can support them. So give me your plugs. What website are you on? Where are your Twitters, your Discord channels? Where can we be part of the mission? And even if we're your ideal customer profile, where can we be involved and get involved in the Salad.com company and platform?
So you can email me, bob@salad.com. If any of you are interested in kicking the tires of a fully managed container service, that is what's on my mind at the moment. Salad.com is where you'll learn more about our product, who we are, what we do, what we offer. and of course, how we're better than the incumbents. So if anyone's a huge consumer of compute, love to hear from you.
Love that. Love that. Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself, Bob, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. I can't wait to share it with everyone.
Likewise. Thanks, Julian.
Of course.